Hi there. Thanks so much for listening in today. This is Emily Cook, Vice President of Education Services at Bluum. And today I'm talking to Dr. Laura Spencer about the virtual reality project that she's been working on, what inspired it, what she's learned along the way. Laura is such an incredible leader. Her approach to innovation is always led by having a laser focus on learning goals. And I am really excited for each of you to hear her story. So we're going to jump right in. Laura, will you introduce yourself and Elite Academic Academy?
Sure. So Elite Academic Academy is a unique charter school in that we are a non-classroom based charter in Southern California. So for those in other parts of the country, in California, we do have some non-classroom based charters, and you can be in multiple counties depending on how you're authorized. So we are transitional kindergarten through 12th grade. We have approximately 2,500 students enrolled, and we serve 8 counties throughout Southern California. We do not have a single learning center location. So whereas some places are hybrid, we are completely remote. Within that system, we actually have 3 different approaches to learning. One of which is your traditional homeschool model, which would be what most people think of when parents want to teach their children. Okay, so homeschool, they come to us just for help accessing curriculum and making sure that grades are posted in a way that is legal and above board. And on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, we have Virtual Academy. And Virtual Academy is completely online learning. So if you think about a lot of the colleges that are out there, maybe like University of Phoenix or National University, where everything's online, that's our Virtual Academy. And so in that one, parents are minimally involved. So this a lot of times are for children who are in transition. Either they failed out of a public school and they're really just trying to graduate. We had a lot of students who come to so insanely credit deficit that it's pretty sad. And then on the other end, we have students who have quite the most amazing life and can't make it to traditional school. We have Olympic horseback riders and surfers, and we have actors, and we have people that are traveling the globe for a few months out of the year. And so that, again, the traditional system doesn't work for them either, but for different reasons. And then in the middle, we have this program, which we call Flex, which is for the younger kids. And it's kind of a bit of both. So we expect the parent to be a partner in the learning, but the teacher is heavily involved. So there is curriculum and parents do a lot of the work, but so does the teacher. Our teachers in that academy are really hands-on with the parent to make sure that learning happens for the younger children. So all 3 of those function in a remote world. So our teachers work from home every day. We are, on Zoom, but we're not Zoom school. You don't log in at 8:00 and stay on until 3:00. It's independent study. So the information is there. The teachers are available. There are live sessions students can log into, but they don't have to. So that's the rule in California, is that you have to provide opportunity, but students don't have to attend. Our ADA, our attendance, is driven by work completion and what we're showing that students are learning. So it's a very different model than if you're thinking about COVID. And I was home with my daughter during COVID. She had to log in at 8. She still had to ask permission to go to the bathroom. It's not that at all. Our students might be online for 45 minutes at a time, a few times during the day or maybe just during the week. And then there's a ton of field trips and other opportunities for them as well. So it's kind of a unique model.
You've explained it to me before, and I can't hear it enough. It's so unique. And I think it's so cool how you're able to service every different kind of student need within this environment. So very, very cool. So we were talking about technology tools that you're really excited about right now, and you brought up the topic of VR. And so I am just curious, what was the impetus for that? What made you start exploring VR? What was kind of the challenge that you were trying to solve?
VR has been around for quite a while, and my boss said to me, I guess it was probably 2 years ago, we should look at VR. And I said no. So the backstory is I've been dabbling with VR for a long time. I've been in the EdTech world for many years. I've brought it to multiple school districts, and every time it's been like a toy. It's been just this thing. You go in, and people always tell you, oh, you can walk the plank, and you'll feel like you're gonna fall. And so it was like those moments, but I couldn't really find the depth in the learning experience. So every time I bought devices or I used Google Cardboard or all the different versions, I was like, no, this is not it. So even when my boss was like VR, and I'm like, no, this is not it. But the shift, honestly, is AI, because AI plus VR creates these XR experiences that are quite different. And so what we were seeing, the reason that I finally was like, yes, is we have this engagement gap. So I told you about our students and that they're in 8 counties and they have all these different life situations. Is students have different levels of access to life depending really on their zip code, depending on who is raising them and where they happen to live. So I tell people The reason I became an English teacher is because I liked my English teacher. I know that my quirky passions and topics of interest were potential career fields because I wasn't exposed to that. My parents were not college graduates. And, I lived in a town that had a science lab. It was a nuclear laboratory in our town. So if you were in the sciences, you were good. But if there was anything else, there really wasn't anything for you. So I was very limited. So with VR, what we're seeing is this opportunity to really bring anything in the world to these students wherever they are. And it sounds corny, but it's so true that, I've had students who've never been to the beach. And yes, there's something about putting your toes in the sand and the water. It's my favorite thing in the world. But it is a substitute opportunity to at least say, I can put this headset on you and give you some sort of an experience and make you see why you should go to the beach, even if that's
Mm.
it, right? Like, let me show you what you're missing. And how can I fill that hole for you? When we have students who want to go into these trade school pathways and we're teaching them online, how much cooler is it though to be able to put on a headset and actually see it and explore what it is that you're learning? So if I'm learning pathophysiology and we mail them a little skeleton and we mail them the Play-Doh so that they can, build out the systems, but can you also go into VR and dissect a system? Right? I'm not going to mail everybody frogs on ice for a frog dissection, but they could put on a headset and explore that. So the reason AI is key right now is what's happening in VR space. What we're doing is we're building AI characters and putting them in VR. So for example, last year, our students did a whole journey to the moon. It was a 2-week intensive program with VR, and they were, studying the Apollo missions and the technology and such going into space. Cool. You can get in VR. You can control the lunar landing module. You can see if you can land on the moon. Like that's fine. Cool. But you can also talk to Neil Armstrong, and that Neil Armstrong AI character is loaded with all primary source documentation from that era, everything Neil Armstrong has ever written, every interview he's ever participated in. And so these students now are having this one-on-one conversation, and they're like, so tell me, when you said this, what was the experience like? And yes, it's AI, but they're having these moments to have this clarity of understanding in a way that hasn't happened before. And so again, I got students in 8 counties from all different walks of life, but now they're all having this combined shared understanding in this moment to talk to these characters. So, we've had JFK, we've had Cleopatra, all these different pieces, and we can build it. So it's not even like I have to go out and buy these games anymore, right? We're using a platform called Engage VR, and you can build the AI characters in there. They have backgrounds and such, and you can put them in a spot and have these conversations. We've had students in courtrooms. So when you're reading To Kill a Mockingbird and you're talking about like what is happening and what should be going on, that conversation shifts when you actually put them in a courtroom and you say, let's have this conversation. We've also started having our leadership meetings sometimes in VR, not all the time, right? Limited, but
Mhm.
how much more powerful when you're talking about something important and you know that your leadership team is not answering email, not looking at text messages, not petting their dog because they're in a headset and all those distractions are gone. Right. So for the next 20 minutes, I have my headset on. I'm in this space. We're sitting at a table. It's like this weird, like boardroom table. And all I can do is pay attention because that's all I can do. And so it just started changing the conversation. Again, it's like everything else. Like we're not a Zoom school, we're not a VR school. Like I'm not going to put a headset on a kid and say, "Hey, sit in here for 5 hours and learn all the things." But we've tried it 2D. We did the whole journey to the moon with the kids in 2D. Like, hey, watch this video, and even like move around this room, talk to the AI characters just via their Chromebooks, and then we shipped them the headset. We said we're actually going to take you through the entire thing again with a headset on, and the students were like, my gosh, like the retention of knowledge, just their interest, and again, kind of a novelty, which is nice. We know once you use things every day, it becomes boring after a while. So we're really keen on like these being like intensives, like, hey, you have it for 2 weeks and this is what you're doing with it. And then it's gone.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's been our experience. And we've done a lot of work. We spent all last year doing professional development with leadership and lead teachers, about 40 of us who went through a bunch of experiences. We actually had them design experiences, which most people think like, you should do that maybe year 3 or 4. And I said, no, we're going to start there because when you design, you start to see what's possible and kind of push the envelope in different ways. And in a couple of weeks, students are going to be going to the Titanic and talking to people that, were part of the Titanic and exploring like the physics and what happened, why did it happen? We could talk about the science of hypothermia, and there's so many different components that can be pulled into that. And then we have kids who are doing some painting. They're in a painting class, but now they're going to be doing some VR painting, so it's a different type of painting exposure. But I just feel like it's just this perfect moment now. We keep talking about the global economy and how we're all citizens of the world and all these different pieces, but you're still tied to your zip code. Family is willing to take you, right? Like, do you get to
Mhm.
go on vacation or do you not get to go on vacation? My vacation was going to my grandparents, like, so it was very limiting in scope for me. But I just feel like now that's not a hindrance. It shouldn't be a hindrance anymore for students. And I just think VR is a possibility. And I think how many students might even change their career focus if they had opportunities to experience it, even at a basic level before going there.
So, two things you mentioned I want to
Mhm.
go back to. First of all, you talked a little bit about the platform. So, just when you think about like building out the solution, you talked about a platform and you talked about professional learning. What are the elements of the
There
solution?
is a
So,
hardware element, and pick your poison. Not endorsing anybody, but we went with Meta, right, with the Quest because of feasibility and access to so many different tools. For those listening who were part of the whole iPad iPod one-to-one movement years ago, when we started iPads and iPods, you had to set up each device with its own account. You had to go in and download the app, and it was the most tedious. I remember thinking, like, I can't do this as a career. Like, this is going to kill me. And then they figured out like MDMs, and then we started figuring out how you could bulk purchase, and like Apple, figured it all out. VR is in the infancy of that, right? So it's
Mhm.
still got some of those same issues of I can't bulk purchase apps from the Meta store yet. I got to do this. So we really looked at who's out there that again, can help us build something. And I didn't want it to just be oh, cool, I did that thing for 20 minutes and who cares? And a
Right.
lot of the people that pitched their solutions to me felt that way. They were
Mhm.
beautiful. They were stunning. They're like, like I went in this science lab and there were beakers and I could mix chemicals and I could break the beaker and I thought, okay, that's cool, but like what am I learning?
Mhm.
It's such potential, but it has to again be used right and it has to be used within the context where it makes sense. And so that's
Mhm.
why we were very intentional. And again, there's other products out there. We looked at Engage because Engage is a free app, but then it's a license. So it's like I'm not dependent on the Meta store to make sure this thing works, right? I can push it out. We can get kids logged in. I can control their experience. I can say you're going into this room and here's the AI character you're talking to. And we bought an MDM so we could lock down devices so that they can't go and purchase games. So we've locked them down. Those things aren't available to them. But that took time. And that's why
Yeah.
we started with leadership instead of starting with students, where most people are like, that seems so weird that you would start with like your principals and your curriculum people and such. I'm like, no, because I wanted them to be part of it and have buy-in and say, yeah, this works, or we tried this and we didn't like that, or I see why you don't want to go down this direction right now. And so really spend some time with them.
The other thing I wanted to go back to that you mentioned was the impact. So you talked about engagement and retention of knowledge. So how are you measuring that impact, or just even anecdotally, what are you seeing when your kids are using VR?
So we're still in the infancy. So it's funny because we were talking the other day about what data are we going to start collecting so we can do some research on it. When you put students in these VR spaces, it's funny because it's immediately chaos, right?
Mhm.
Because like wandering the space and having conversations, but it's like the fun chaos of they're excited and they're exploring, and it's not the chaos of we. Every teacher has that nightmare of I have no control over my classroom. Like it's not that, right? It's like it's excitement, and the fact that they still talk about it. Like the students who did the Apollo mission, are like when's the next one? What are we doing next? And you don't get that like at the end of your algebra lesson, right? Like, do we get more Pythagorean theorem tomorrow? That's gonna be so much fun, right? And so when we've had these sessions, attendance is high, right? Students don't want to miss those sessions because they know it's happening. So even again, we're independent study. They don't have to be there. They're there,
Mhm.
right? This
That's
this is
huge.
a step that they don't want to miss. And then also I find that you have these group experiences, but one of the things we're exploring this year too is what is it also like if you have the solo experience? So if I bring a group of students in and they do the Apollo mission and they're landing the lunar module, that's a lot of fun. But if I was a student who struggled, the fact that I could go back in and do it
Mhm.
on my own, and if I was in a classroom, like a lot of my people who aren't independent study, if I was in a classroom and you picture, let's say you had like 10 students on a VR headset, you could personalize, right? Like I could say, I want you to do this, I want you to do this, I want you to do this. Wouldn't it be neat for students to have the learning at their level and not have the person next to them know that? Right. So like I can put students in VR and like we're, like a math program, and I could put you in VR and I say, okay, you're working on Pythagorean theorem. And the student next to you could still just be working on negative and positive numbers. You don't know. You're in your own environment. Again, you're not looking at the person next to you. You have no idea, what they're doing. So I think in that sense too, the opportunity to have like personalized experiences that are safe, and you don't feel like you're called out at all. I'm anticipating are going to be huge. The other piece for me, honestly, is SEL. So like with the AI characters, learning how to have a conversation and learning how to ask questions that get you the response that you're wanting. Am I asking a question that's eliciting a response? Am I asking just a yes or no question? Because some of the characters will push back. Like if you ask JFK, um, who killed you? Like he's not going to answer that, right? And that's also like that's not an appropriate question. And so he will say like, oh well, let's talk about the good that I've done for the country, or ask me something else. They're also just learning how to navigate this world, this adult world that they're entering into. So I just think that's going to be another piece. So we're at the infancy. I would say like ask me in June what we've seen this year, and I'll probably have a much more robust answer, because last year was really like our first year of diving deep and saying this is where we're going. And then we'd only bought 50 devices last year. We just bought over this summer. I think we're now up to 400 devices. So we'll have some data this year.
Okay, so we'll wrap it up, but maybe a couple of your final thoughts on what do you wish you knew when you started out on this journey, or what advice would you give to someone who's interested in maybe dipping their toes?
I think you have to realize that when you're on the cutting edge, there's going to be pain points. So you can't think that you're gonna buy VR and it's just gonna go splendidly. We've had a lot of struggles in terms of getting it to do what we want to do, because we're in education. I've actually gone to Meta headquarters in LA and talked to their team and said, I don't like this and I like this. And so you have to be willing to be in that environment where you're gonna have those types of conversations. And you have to bring the players in early. So my IT guys have a VR headset. My curriculum, has a VR headset. Yeah, like different people from different walks of life. It can't be just you. It can't be like the EdTech director says, I'm going to do this. And I think the other thing too is, and it's not for everybody, determining where it fits best and having that fluidity to say that didn't work. We thought we'd use it for this group and it was going to be great, and it wasn't. And that's okay. And like we did, start small. If you have a 1,000 students in your school, don't go in there saying, how am I going to afford 1,000 devices? Buy 20.
I think like what I hear you talk about always, whenever we talk, is like you have the vision for learning in mind first. Like, this is what I want the impact to be on my kids and my teaching. That's what drives it. It's not like I want to bring in VR because VR is cool.
Right. I did a whole school refresh years ago, and it was like, the school on the wrong side of the tracks. And so their attendance was low and people were putting their kids in other schools. And so it was like, well, if we just put touchscreen boards in the front of every room and we buy the clickers, the parents will come. And it's like, they will come. I have no doubt they will come for a couple of years. And then if they realize that their students aren't getting any better learning, they're going to put them back at the school that they were at before. And so it always has to be learning focused, and you have to have that vision, and people have to have bought into that vision too. So you can't declare it. I can't go out there and say, I've declared that all students need to have engaging learning experiences that are immersive. I had to get my team on board with that. You have to focus on the learning, and you have to get the people to buy in. You can't just throw this stuff at them. It's too much work to just throw it at them, because it's not going to happen overnight.
My goodness, you are exactly right. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Laura, and I look forward to chatting with you soon.
All right, I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you all so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed getting to know Dr. Laura Spencer and learning a little bit more about Elite Academic Academy and their approach to integrating VR to increase student engagement and retention of knowledge. A few things that she shared today that I think really apply to all EdTech innovation. Number one, start with learning goals first. Number two, bringing in stakeholders. She talked about the IT department, curriculum leaders, teachers, and administrators, getting them on board and not just declaring in a silo what we want to happen, but rather bringing folks along for the journey. And number three, I love the way that she talked about the research and the development that went into designing the whole solution. We know that hardware alone is not going to have the transformative impact on education that we want. It's so important to consider all the pieces that go together. So that does include selecting the right hardware, but then partnering it with the software that you need to accomplish your goals. Then the way she talks about professional learning as an essential first step to pave the way for effective adoption and integration of new technology as absolutely something that I think is to be admired. This conversation was such a joy for me, and I hope that you enjoyed it too. Have a great day.